720 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Central Hudson reminds you, when you're doing yard work, safety matters. If you use a ladder, be aware of overhead electric lines, including the service wire that runs to your house. Even wooden ladders can conduct electricity with dangerous results. And be very careful if there are electric lines above or near a swimming pool, and you're working with skimmers, brooms, or other long-handled tools. Central Hudson wishes you a safe summer.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, my name is Jackie Lovezzo. I'm from Lake Katrine, and I support Kingston Community Radio because it is an invaluable resource to the community and its residents.
This programming is brought to you by the Friends of Kevin Cahill. As a strong advocate of local broadcasting, Assemblymember Cahill urges you to support Kingston Community Radio with your time and donations. Your contributions keep KCR vital and on the air at FM 92.5, AM 920, and on the web at mykcr.org. Please join Assemblymember Cahill and send your gifts of $10, $25, or more to Kingston Community Radio, Post Office Box 4364, Kingston, New York 12402. Together, let's keep KCR alive.
So good morning, Kingston. Good morning. This is Kingston Community Radio. Mario Catalano with Brian Woltman this morning, pinch hitting for my regular partner, Hugh Reynolds, who's away on a family for a family event. And he's possibly going to call in, so we might hear a little bit something from Reynolds. But in any event, I got Brian and I are here this morning live. Remember, our number is 331-9255 if you have any issues you'd like to discuss. And we're gonna start. We're gonna take it away with a headline in this morning's paper about the Kingston police chief, Brian, who's interested in putting cameras in high crime parts of the city. So I don't know where Brian stands on this, but I can tell you that anytime we can get some cameras up in high crime areas, I don't see that as an issue.
No, good morning, Mario, and thanks for having me jump into this morning. I have big shoes to fill here with you, Reynolds, but I've always enjoyed being on this station and hosting a time with Heidi Haynes, and it's a lot of fun to be here, and it's a glorious Friday morning. So, but to what you brought up, Mario, I'll go from a larger 30,000-foot view on this. I happen to think surveillance cameras in public areas are helpful. The city of Kingston, interestingly enough, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the Hodge Center was first opened, there was a KPD, Kingston Police Department substation was included in that.
Yeah, I remember that. Sure.
And there were at that time there were surveillance cameras. That's right on Franklin Street, and at the time, people who live in Kingston may recall, that was a troubled area back then. There was violence and a lot of drug dealing, and it was thought to be a good thing to have a police substation in the area. And they also set up surveillance cameras in the area. So this is nothing new. I happen to, but from the 30,000 point view, just speaking largely, I happen to think that with the technology we have today and the availability of cameras which can be small, inexpensive, and relatively easy to install, I think the prevalence of surveillance cameras should be far even wider than just so-called high crime areas. They could be used. I mean, if you have them at an intersection and there happens maybe to be an automobile accident, it could be used to sort out what happened there. And so I think there's a lot of benefits from having it out there. And again, they're all posted. The idea that they're I don't think people have concerns about privacy, and you want to live in people's minds a little bit. And people are concerned that maybe the government might someday want to track your movements. Like, oh, here's Mario. He was here. He's there. Now he's over here. Oh, who is he sitting meeting with? I don't think that they're ever going to be used for that purpose. I happen to think that that surveillance, if you're in a public area, your public street, I mean, any police officer, if they happen to be there, would have to observe. But we have limited. The police can't be everywhere.
Well, that's what's interesting, Brian. You know, you got a bunch of people calling for reducing the presence of the police department. Let's defund. Let's make the department smaller. Well, there's still a big city to cover, and if you're doing it with fewer personnel, if you're doing it with a tighter budget, and you have the ability to observe some areas, as I know he wants to, he said he wanted to do it in high crime parts of the city. Well, that completely makes sense. Why would you put cameras up in areas where there's no crime? I mean, what we're trying to find and what we're trying to do is we're trying to cut down on the amount of crime, and so you're going to
be able to solve them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
we have four murders that haven't been solved.
Yeah, it's an awful situation. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want the city going on. Being known as a place where murders remain unsolved and crime occurs. So I'm good with this. I think first of all, I think the chief does a great job.
I've worked with Chief Cincy for many years, my entire time with the city. He and I used to work a lot closer when he was a lieutenant, and we used to, he and I would work together to get some materials. In fact, we worked together to get with the cameras originally back in I think the late '90s over on Franklin Street. But look, it's common sense. At the end of the day, it boils down. It's common sense. It's a logical, common sense step.
Now, are they talking about this being funded by the Common Council? Is it a grant?
No, I do not know the specifics of that. I'm sure I will find out.
Yeah, right.
But at this point, I don't know the specifics of what the funding stream will be for this. But I happen to think it's whether it comes out of city budget, grant money, or wherever. I think it's a very worthwhile thing. And again, like I said, from the 30,000 point view, I'm even like I said, but people would be surprised how many cameras already are out there. Yeah. When you consider Ring doorbells and surveillance cameras on buildings.
Well, I remember when there was the.
They're almost ubiquitous.
When there was the alleged murder out in the town of Ulster that early morning, and when they started bringing in evidence, they had cameras all over Ulster Avenue.
And that was what 6-7 years ago.
Yeah,
and that's only grown since then.
Yeah.
So we could definitely imagine. So people, this really will be an enhancement to what's already in place. Yeah. So, but I happen to think surveillance cameras are very. In Europe, they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Any major intersection or anywhere in Europe, the surveillance cameras are there, and again, they're used to collect. And if something there was occur, you can go back and review and see and try to pin down what happened.
And to a certain extent, I think it also protects the police and the public, because when you have surveillance cameras and somebody says this happened or this police officer did this to me, and we have a camera, on
you just made me think of something, Mario.
On the scene, I mean, it certainly seems to me it protects the public as much as it protects the police.
Of course, and you just this has called something to my mind. You mentioned there are people who are opposed to this and that have concerns, but it's interesting. I believe, and I'm making a presumption here, that many of those people are the same folks who want body cameras on police officers, and who at the slightest interaction with police are very quick to whip out their cell phones and start recording people who deploy cameras on a regular basis or call for their deployment, if they're against this, they're not being consistent.
No, absolutely. And so listen, folks, Brian and I are interested in your point of view as well. We're at Kingston Community Radio, 331-9255. If there's anyone out there who's opposed to these cameras, and they would like to have their point of view expressed here, give us a shout, 331-9255, Kingston Community Radio, and we're going to move on to something else, and but we're more than happy to revisit the camera situation in the city of Kingston. So, Brian, the other thing I'm noting, and very pleasantly noting, is the fact that we seem to really be doing a terrific job. And I got to shout out and say, I think the county government did a really nice job, the county health department, on this COVID, this vaccination thing.
Absolutely, and I was a beneficiary of their work. I received both of my shots at the Best Buy, which was set up by the county. It was remarkable. I guess I picked the prime time to go, and because the lines were incredible, but it was they did a terrific job managing it, and the logistics of it had to be just daunting if you think about just what they needed to do. I see that there's a story out today that they'll come to you now. They'll come to you and if come to your home. And I think I would love to see us close the loop on this and get up to our maximum potential of vaccinations here in Ulster County. It's so wonderful to feel the release of not having of seeing the concern diminish regarding this virus, and I'm just looking forward to a great summer. I'm enjoying it already, although it's technically still spring, but I'm enjoying the
feels like
weather.
Summer.
It sure did. Last weekend sure did, but I enjoyed it. I had a great time last weekend. Enjoyed being in the outdoors. But Mary, would you please allow me? A couple weeks ago, I called into you and you with Reynolds here, and the topic came up about using some of the fiscal recovery funds, what I thought the county priorities would be, and at the time that was the U.S. Department of Treasury is a federal government agency which is managing this, and they've put out what they call an interim final rule for this, and it's as you can imagine with federal funds, folks. There's a lot of, even though this has fewer strings attached than most federal grant money you would receive, there are still significant regulations tied to this. And I was asked what some of my priorities would be for that money, and I mentioned infrastructure, and I still believe that's the way to go. And for the vast majority of this funding, and because infrastructure such as roads, bridges, parks, county parks, they will have the result of that work will have the longest lasting benefit, as I see it, and will benefit all the people. You're not targeting people who will benefit. Every resident and every taxpayer in the county will benefit from that. The other thing I did mention was I thought some of that money should be used for debt relief. As it turns out, at that point, I hadn't read the interim final rule from the U.S. Department of Treasury. I have done so in the meantime. So I'd like to just correct myself if I can. people may be aware that I'm running. I'm seeking re-election to be elected again to the Ulster County Legislature. So I guess that qualifies me as a politician. So I hope this comes as a breath of fresh air to the people listening at home to hear a politician say, "I was wrong." I spoke without having all the data in front of me at the time, and unfortunately, that money cannot be used for debt relief. I think it would be a good purpose for that money, but the Department of Treasury, the Biden administration, the federal government has determined that's not a use that they want to see for those funds. So that's something I just wanted to clarify that for anybody who who heard me speak on that a couple weeks ago on this station. I just want to put it out there that unfortunately, in my view, that's not a use for that funding. So that's something again we can't advocate for it because it's not a approved use.
Brian, I have an observation that I have been involved in politics for a long time, and I sometimes take a cynical view of what I'm seeing. So evidently, Ulster County, I believe the chairman of the legislature wanted to put together an advisory committee to make recommendations on how to spend this money coming from the federal government.
Yep, I heard that as well.
And then I think he got short-circuited when the executive decided that that the executive wanted to put forth the proposals for what they were going to do with the money. So evidently, and again, this is all secondhand, but evidently they collaborated and decided to come up with an advisory committee to study and to try and make recommendations on how to spend the money. It would seem to me that ultimately the legislature still has to approve the expenditures.
That is 100% correct.
So the chairman of the legislature had obviously some skin in the game when he wanted to, put forth a group to make recommendations. The Ulster County executive was thinking, hey, listen, no dice, man. That this is my deal. You guys just approve what, which they normally do, what I decide. So they collaborated. But to me, this is what when I was wandering around and roaming around Albany and Washington and doing my work for the American Dental Association, was what we would call a traditional dog and pony show. So, and the dog and pony part goes like this. First of all, it isn't bipartisan. The county executive is putting 3 of his staff members on this 5-member committee. So he gets to control everything. The legislature gets 2 positions. Donaldson put himself and the majority leader on. So you have a legislature, a 12-11 legislature, and somehow Dave Donaldson thought that 2 of those appointments should go to Democrats and none to Republicans. Yep. This, to me, is not a really great way to start this process.
No, and it does fit, though, the pattern of behavior of the chairman of the legislature. You might recall not long ago, there was a vacancy to the RRA board, and the seat that would be the way it was structured. In fact, the state law calls for that would have been the minority appointment, and the chairman, along with the Democratic majority, chose not to follow the state law in that regard, and they appointed and they made their own choice to the RRA board. So this is the second time now, and I think that was only 2 or 3 months ago. So this is the second time in short succession that this kind of thing has occurred. So there is a pattern with, and I think that's one of the reasons why we need to shift and maybe change the who the majority party is in the legislature. Because I will say this: when Ken Ronk was chairman, he was fastidious about allowing the minority to have a say and a role and a presence on county commissions or boards or advisory committees, and certainly absolutely would have been with the appointment, because the state law called for that to be a minority appointment for that position, that the last board member seat on the RRA board. So I think that's among a lot of the reasons why I believe there should be a change. That's certainly one of the reasons, though. I think it's really critical that we have a change and a shift in who the majority party is in the legislature.
What I don't like. Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
No worries.
I gotta turn this phone off. I forgot to turn it on.
It's just again, like I said, it's just it's nothing new. It's certainly a pattern of behavior and choices that the Democratic majority has made.
Mr. Reynolds.
Hello, Mario. How's it going?
He can't come through there?
You got to have him call in there. It's going to be too distorted.
Yeah, all right. So listen, they're not going to be able to hear you unless you call at
331-9255.
Number I just called. Did you call that?
Well,
all right.
If he's on a cell phone,
just so you know, we're having folks. Hugh Reynolds is going to be calling in, and we're just sorting out the method of which and the phone number of which he's going to call.
You got to understand that Reynolds is a dinosaur, and he's completely overwhelmed with
technology,
any technology whatsoever, and he still thinks that the mail gets delivered by the Pony Express. So,
it doesn't.
Not
no? Are you sure about that?
So anyway, getting back to this whole what I consider phony committee. The executive made it perfectly clear that his people are going to make all the decisions by putting 3 of the 5 people on. Donaldson's saving face by putting himself and the majority leader on. They're going to have nothing to say about it.
I will say this, though, if I could interject. Knowing the majority leader, Tracy Bartels, she will have a lot to say during the meeting.
He didn't put her on.
Isn't she the majority
No,
leader?
Heffernan, somebody, the guy from Woodstock.
Okay, yeah. I thought Tracy was the majority leader.
No.
Okay.
Anybody?
She's the deputy chair.
Yeah, anybody.
I'm not there
anybody with independent thinking here is getting, pushed off the road while they. So essentially, what we have here is them trying to portray this committee. That is going to evaluate the money and do the right thing for the taxpayers, but that's not happening. And one of the things, and I'm happy and glad that you brought up this RRA. In my opinion, I understand that they continue to push affordable housing. I have no issues with affordable housing, but what I do have an issue with is people in this county not be able to put their garbage anywhere soon, and they walk around acting like there's no crisis. Well, let me just say this: in the way I see it, there's a major crisis because there's the landfill that we ship our garbage to
Seneca Meadows.
Yeah, to the tune of $10 million or more a year. All of a sudden is going to be non-existent, and we have no solutions. We have no recommendations. We're sitting on millions and millions of dollars coming in from the federal government that could be used to do something of a positive nature and put this waste situation to rest. And it's not even on the radar.
No, it isn't.
It wasn't even on the top 10.
If I can jump in there, I served my 2 years in the legislature. I served on the Energy and Environment Committee, and that the Energy and Environment Committee is the committee that the RRA reports to in the legislature. And while during my tenure on the legislature, it's just no matter how many times you brought it up, that back then it was Seneca Meadows is going to be closing in about 6-7 years. Back then. Now it's 4 or 5 years, and that's when their permit expires. I happen to believe that Seneca Meadows will get an extension on their operating permit. But unfortunately, the county, and the RA in particular, has not focused on this at all. If you recall, a number of years ago when I was in the legislature, the RA, the priority that they had then was to make the city of Kingston go from single stream recycling to dual stream recycling, which a lot of the private haulers, as you know, in the county now are still do single stream recycling. But it was of utmost importance for the RA to get the city of Kingston to go to a dual stream recycling, which added another bin that we have to have at our homes here in the city, but there was never any talk of what the ultimate solution will be for our waste. Now, at the time, there was a proposal. It was called GUS, G-U-S, for Greene, Ulster, and Sullivan County, of maybe perhaps siting a landfill somewhere in one of those 3 counties, that the expense could be shared proportionally by the counties. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think there's an appetite here in Ulster County, in Greene County, or in Sullivan County to site a landfill anywhere within the confines of those 3 counties. So what do we do? I'm first of all, even if you agreed, if you could identify a site and they were amenable to it, and you wanted to begin the process, the permitting would take much longer. Than we have now. You can make the analogy, if we're trying to land a plane, we're out of runway. We ran out of runway. So at this point, I believe the landfill further west from that past Seneca Meadows, I think is sited. Don't know the specific location, but I believe it's in Ohio. If we were to use the shipping methods that we do now to transport the waste there, our shipping costs would double. So what that would do to the tipping fees for the people, for the city of Kingston, the people who live here in the city of Kingston, and for the rest of Ulster County, for that matter, as the private waste haulers, it's completely unaffordable. So perhaps a railroad siding needs to be sited somewhere, where maybe I find a more economical way to transport this trip. But the reality of the situation is that the likelihood, I should say, of the situation is the Ulster County RA will be shipping garbage or trash to another waste landfill site somewhere, and once Seneca Meadows permit expires, and I believe we're looking about 6 years from now. I happen to be, from everything I know about the situation, Seneca Meadows will have a capacity for maybe perhaps another 2 years past their current permit, and I think that's going to be granted, because we'll be reaching the squeal factor here in also as far as Eastern New York, what it's going to cost to ship our trash even further. So I think it's a two-pronged process thing. I think an appropriate focus should be on reducing the amount of waste that we have to ship, and so recycling does work for that. But there certainly, during my time in the legislature and my time on the Energy Environment Committee, there was very little appetite at the RRA to really have a robust recycling program. The recycling was, my sense of it, was viewed by them as a hassle, an inconvenience, is something they really didn't want to deal with, and that's one of the reasons I think they forced the city into this dual stream, because of the mechanics of the task that they would have to do to sort the recycling at their center. So they do have a MRF. A MRF is a machine that sorts out recycling material. For whatever reason, though, they seem hesitant to deploy that or use that to its full capacity. But I think that's again, with also figuring out where you're going to build your railroad siding. But, again, I like to look at things from a 30,000-foot view. I think it's time that maybe we revisit the RA as it exists. when that was, I don't know that the RRA in all the years that it's existed, I believe since the 1980s, I think Charlie Shaw was their first director. I don't know that they've ever really fulfilled the promise of what that organization was going to do. And I think it might be time to look at maybe folding it back and making into a county department that's answerable directly to the legislature and the county executive. So,
well,
something to think about.
That would be appropriate. Except, and my understanding was that the politicians didn't want that RRA reporting directly to them because then they would be responsible.
Oh, accountability.
And this way they've got this third party they can blame. Oh, the RRA is not doing their job, etc. Well, here we're sitting on a pile of money, and not one dime of it so far has been allocated to resolving what I think is going to be probably the biggest crisis, even bigger.
The elephant in the room.
Bigger than a couple of low-income apartments. And they just keep kicking this can down the road, and then when the time comes, they're going to sit back, and these are their appointees on the RRA board. These are the people they put there to solve this problem. They're not solving the problem. They haven't had an original idea in a while, and I know when Fred Wadnola was involved, he tried to get some interest ginned up in a tri-county, like you were talking about, the Gus
or
deal.
even he would speak often about having an incinerator similar to what they have in the city of Poughkeepsie.
Yep.
And by the way, with the scrubber, by the way, I should first put out here, I'm going to talk about the benefits of having an incinerator, how much good that would do for our county, while also knowing there is zero appetite in this county to build one.
They're very popular in Europe.
I know they are. And the scrubbers and the technology that they have. But again, I'm not going to.
They generate electricity.
They do, and there's so much good, as I see it, that they can accomplish with all the new technology. But again, you have to face reality, things as they are. I would love it if the Yankees would somehow start winning on a regular basis, but they can't even sweep the Twins. So I have to acknowledge reality as it is, and there's zero appetite in this county. There would be zero political appetite in this county for that to accomplish. You can't even build an apartment complex in Kingston. If you think you're going to build an incinerator in this county, forget about it. It's not going to happen. And but again, that's why, you mentioned, and it was a buffer. Probably you're correct on that. The RRA was set up to be a buffer for the legislature, and at that time, the chairman of the county, the chairman of the legislature was the de facto county executive. Yeah. They wanted that buffer. But you know what? What good did that do? What good did that do, folks? We have a problem here. It's the elephant in the room. It needs to be solved. This RRA has been in existence for 30 years, and they haven't addressed it at all. And the record is abysmal. And now their latest and greatest primary focus is on composting. Oh, great! And that's all. That's just my view. Composting is good. I'm not gonna. They need to do a better job of managing their composting operation out there. But it's a revenue generator. They're looking at it as just to generate revenue. It's not really to solve our overwhelming problem here of
all right,
trash
folks.
disposal.
So you're listening to Kingston Community Radio this morning. We're talking about the RRA. We're talking about our garbage situation. We're talking about some solutions, potential solutions. You're welcome to call in. You got Mario Catalano, Brian Woltman this morning, 331-9255. Hugh Reynolds, my traditional partner on these Fridays, is away on a family outing. So, Brian, we have a call. Good morning, caller. And what would you like to discuss?
Hey, good morning. This is Hugh's son, David. Good morning, Mario.
Hey, David. We got one Reynolds here. That's good.
And just wanted to tell you, my dad has been trying to call in, and he hasn't been able to get through. As you said, he's on his outing, but he was trying to get through. So he just wanted to tell you that he's sorry that he couldn't connect, and asked me to try to come on in and let you know, and certainly give a big good morning to you.
Thank you, David. And he did send me some notes, so I've got some things there that he wants me to mention. So I'll be getting to those in this next half hour. But thank you so much for the call.
Oh, you got it. Sure thing. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a great day. And again, our number is 331-9255.
331-9255.
Love to chat with any of you. Could I just take a second here, Mario? As I mentioned earlier, I am seeking to be elected again to the Ulster County Legislature in the 7th District here in the city of Kingston. I really believe there's a lot of good work that we started back then that I would like to continue. To that end, though, tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock at the White Eagle Hall in Kingston on Delaware Avenue in Kingston, we're having a ward meeting or ward get-together. So just it's not it won't be a formal event where there won't be speakers or this or that, but basically it's a chance to visit, talk, catch up. Let me hear what's on your mind. COVID has made it difficult for people to get together for a year or so now, but we're able to do so safely now. And I'm hopeful to meet as many people tomorrow morning as we can at 11 o'clock at the White Eagle Hall on Delaware Avenue in Kingston. Whether you live in the 7th District or not, it's primarily an 8th Ward meeting, but I would love to chat with anybody from the 7th Legislative District or anywhere in the city of Kingston, because I'm interested to hear what's on your mind, what are your concerns, what do you think of us dirty politicians, and just have a chance to visit. And I'm hopefully tomorrow we can have a chance to do that. Be a
spirited conversation, absolutely.
Oh, 100%. And I'm all ears. I think you'll find one of the reasons I'm running again is this term of this legislature, we were so active. The 2 years we were in, whether people agree with what was done or not, whether it be the Bring Your Own Bag Act, the Tobacco 21, also some of the things we did is related to ethics, and I just thought we had a very active legislative session the 2 years I was in. I will say the last 2 years, I know there's been COVID, but it's been kind of a sleeper. And I just don't see a lot of initiative on the legislature right now. And there's a lot of problems that need to be solved. And whether structurally, as I look at it from the county point of view as well, what's going to be occurring during the next session of the legislature is reapportionment.
Yeah.
Of the districts. Mara, I think I talked with you once before about this. I happen to be a resident of the city of Kingston. As it stands now, there are 23 legislators in the Ulster County Legislature, 3 of which are from the city of Kingston. So the city of Kingston, as the county seat, has 3 representatives on the legislature, and there's 20 legislators from elsewhere in the county. So that's 3 against 20 sometimes. And one of my positions is that I will not allow or fight vigorously against any diminishment of that representation ratio of 3 versus 20. I don't want to see that diminished at all. I've concerns that maybe a couple of the districts that are right now contained within the city of Kingston will be reapportioned as much as that they'll be absorbing maybe parts of maybe other towns that are outside the city of Kingston. So there'll be a hybrid district, and I would be opposed to that. So that's one of the reasons why, among all the reasons I'm running, that's one of the issues I'm primarily concerned about.
When we did the last reapportionment, I was the Republican chairman, and one of the things I asked our appointees to do is to try and maintain the integrity of the geographical districts as close as possible to the geographical entities that they were representing. So one of the reasons I believe that the city of Kingston had 3 districts contained within the city of Kingston, even though they're slightly smaller than the average size, was to focus those legislators. The same thing with the town of Ulster when we created one district completely within the town of Ulster, another district that we shared with Saugerties, but then 2 more districts completely contained in Saugerties. And I thought it was good because there are issues that are very town-centric that need to be addressed, and those towns need to have someone that they can call their own representative. The real problem that you run into is the population, and I don't know how, I believe Ulster County has actually lost population.
Yes, we have, which is counterintuitive. You wouldn't believe it, but that is absolutely the case, as all of upstate New York has.
Well, I've discussed this before, and I'm not exactly sure how that happened. We seem to pick up 20,000 new Democratic voters without picking up any population increase. So there's something as far as I can see is
askew.
Yeah, something's not adding up here. That we got people voting here who don't live here, and that when it came to the census, they were registering as residents someplace else. But whatever. It is what it is, and we'll deal with it. But I wanted to get back to this RRA situation because now we have a scenario where the county controller is trying to audit the one aspect of it. I believe it's the composting part, and can't seem to get the information. She claims that a contract was signed giving Ulster County complete access to the RRA books. The RRA stating that the only people that they're accountable to is the state controller.
Subject to audit review, that's what they're claiming. Yep. I happen to in this particular instance, I happen to believe the county comptroller is correct.
Okay.
As I understand it, it had to do with the composting. There was a contract signed, I believe, in 2017 between the county and the RRA, and in that, the terms of that contract do call for the comptroller to be able to review, I believe, that portion of their. I don't know that she would have the complete authority to audit every aspect of their operations, but I do believe as it's related to this in particular, I believe that she does, or the county comptroller does. So, and again, I mostly know what I know about this. I've read from in the media, in the local coverage. But I haven't. I'll definitely be listening to, I believe, this month's. And that's another thing, folks. You can listen to all the committee meetings of the Ulster County Legislature on their website. They have tabs. You can go back and listen to the audio. You can download the agenda, and you can listen to the audio. But I believe there's going to be discussion notes to that, or I would expect that the comptroller will be coming in to meet with the Energy Environment Committee this month. I would think that would be the process, and so I'm looking to listen to that meeting this month and see and ascertain what exactly what her position is, directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So. But as I just from my cursory reading about it in the paper, I do believe the county comptroller is correct in this instance, that she has the authority, and the RRA should be required to turn over those records. And I'll go one step even further. Even if it's found that the county comptroller doesn't have the subpoena authority for those records, I think it would behoove, as my mother used to love that word, it would behoove the RRA to make those records available. Be transparent.
Yeah.
And let them be reviewed. And if you feel that any findings are faulty, defend your records.
Yeah, exactly.
At that point. I'm uncomfortable that they would not want. I don't believe in this instance that the Martz Gallagher, our county comptroller, I don't believe she's on a fishing expedition. I think there's cause and concern, and it's certainly been in the news lately. So I think those records should be turned over. I think the county comptroller, I would like to see her review those, her staff and herself review those records. If there are findings to be called out, call on the RRA to put together a corrective action plan and address them. If there are no findings, then very good. Thank you for providing the records.
So in other words, you're in favor of like good government.
Yes,
Well, that might be an
yes.
issue
I squarely come down on good government and not having to maybe. I don't believe, even going back to citizen records, I don't necessarily think it should be required to make every citizen request of every record go through what they call the Freedom of Information Law, the FOIL. I think sometimes the records should be more accessible, provided, redact, or, certainly there's privacy concerns, there's sometimes, employees and specifics, but you have to guard against that. And there are reasons to have sometimes ask a person to fill out a Freedom of Information Law request, a FOIL request. But on balance, I think the policy should be have the items available. And I would hope, and like I said, I think it's in the it's a long-term interest of the RRA itself to make those records available. That would be my suggestion to them.
Well, it would seem that it's we're all part of the same community, and somebody has some questions about, in this case, the controller has a question about how we're managing the some of the funds, and is there some favoritism being shown with the composted material? And all right, just step up and let us let somebody in unbiased fashion examine this and figure out what the heck's going on.
I'll even go a step further. Now, I'm not saying this is the case. I've already said it's not the case. I don't believe it's the case. But hypothetically, if it should turn out that maybe the comptroller is on a fishing expedition, then you would at that time call them out on it. But if the records are indicate a solid quality operation, then turn them over by all means, please. Again, the RRA,
My suspicion is nobody would even be looking at this unless there was a complaint or two circulating or whatever.
You know what, though? I will say this. As someone that I've worked in government now for 26 years almost and have been subject to audits on a regular basis. I get audited every year internally. We have our city. We have our own. I work for the city of Kingston. I'm the director of purchasing for the city, so I have to maintain all my records as how things are, what the procurement process was, and how with acquisition of materials and supplies and services. So on a yearly basis, we usually. Pretty soon now, sometimes it's usually during the summer. The auditors will come in. And they'll call out, they'll take their sample records and they'll ask me to provide the records of all, from various transactions we did in the prior year, and I'll have to provide that, and the record, the procurement process has to be there, and that's part of the bargain, folks. When you decide you want to get into government work, that's part of the deal. You expect that your work is going to be reviewed, and you have your records, and you're subject to audit. And at any time, the state comptroller, yes, can swoop in and say, here we are, we're here to audit your procurement process. And,
right.
And that can go on for about a year, those audits. Those are deep dives. I've been through a couple of them, not in a long, long time, though, but one, interestingly enough, was, I'm telling you a personal story now. I was hired by the city of Kingston in December of 1995. And when I walked in as the purchasing, as I walked in, there were people in the office. I didn't know everybody. I'm new, and I presumed that they worked in the office. They didn't. They were actually people from the state comptroller's office, who were in doing an audit review of the city of Kingston at the time. And I think it was somewhere maybe in late 96 or early 1997 that there were findings. Now, in the circumstance, they happened to be before I came to work for the city, but they identified they had some findings as it related to procurement, and I guess there were a few deficiencies. And I got called to the finance committee meeting, and the chairman was Charlie Landy at the time, and I was there with Penny Roddle. She was the city comptroller at the time, and basically we had to say we put a corrective action plan in place. This is how things will be operated differently going forward, based on what the findings were. And I remember Charlie Landy almost making me pinky swear that I would abide by that. And at the time, and I was very nervous. I was kind of semi-new on the job. I was comfortable enough in knowing that this all preceded my time, but but I would be responsible going forward from that point on. And so it was an early lesson to me, wrapping around back again, that it was an early lesson to me at the time that if you're going to work for the government, particularly in a situation where public funds are expended, that you have to have the expectation and the realization that your work will be reviewed, and hopefully everything will be found to be in good order. So it goes with, my dad had expressed, it goes with the territory. Yep. It goes with the territory. That's part of the deal, part of the bargain. So, all right, let's hand over those records, and let's put this to bed immediately. Let's not have a fight now on something like this, and let's turn over the records, let our county comptroller review them, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world, and if the comptroller has an interest in this, in my opinion, there's probably something that she's either heard, suspected, or feels should be audited. So let's just get it audited. And
it's been in the news, and also as we talked earlier, it's a massive, as the RRA views it, it's a massive revenue generator. What else would a county comptroller be interested in looking auditing where the money is?
Yeah.
There, as I understand it, there is an agreement in place for this particular aspect of their operations, that they signed a contract with the county that gives this authority to the comptroller. So turn the records. Sometimes it becomes about territorialism and sovereignty. I'm in charge here. You don't have the authority.
The problem is, it's our tax money
100%
that's going to get wasted on lawyers going to court to get these documents, and at the end of the day, nothing productive came out of that expenditure. And that's where I really have a problem, is that when we can't come to common ground, and we have to go to court, and we have to tie up the courts on stuff like this, when some sort of agreement should have been able to be reached. And here are the books. Look them over. See what you think. Tell us what you think we should do differently, and we're done with it. So I'm very, very disappointed that these people have dug in, and more importantly, I mean, there's a board there. That board is appointed by the legislature.
Correct.
I believe the exec in the legislature, or maybe just the legislature. I can't remember. But the point is, what are they doing? Why aren't they speaking up? They're our representatives. They're the people's representatives on this agency. And
well, I will say, during my time as the Energy Environment on the Energy Environment Committee, we did appoint a couple of the people that are currently serving on the board of the RRA to the board. And I believe the people that we did appoint during my time in the legislature and on that committee, I think are quality people. And I'm hopeful. I remain hopeful that they will urge their director he's new now. Tim Rose was the director of the RM. The person who succeeded him, his name escapes me right now, but I'm hopeful that the people that we appointed at the board during my time in the legislature, who I believe still are quality people, I'm proud of those appointments, will press the director to make those items available to the
All
comptroller.
right, folks. Anybody have anything they want to discuss on this?
Want to talk some trash?
Just give us a shout at 331-9255, Kingston Community Radio. We're taking your calls this morning. We're discussing a wide range of subjects, and in the absence of my Friday partner, Hugh Reynolds, I want to say that he called in, and you can take a pass on this one, Brian, but one of the things he wants to know is why the city and why the city needs to spend $20,000 for a consultant to advise the city on how to spend $17 million federal pandemic aid. He said that officials have said that people hired full-time to write grants don't know how to apply for this kind of funding. So I'm not sure what that's all about, but if anybody out there, I'm giving Brian a pass on this one. He works for the city, and he shouldn't really get involved in this. But it seems to Reynolds and I, and one of the problems I have, Brian, is you Reynolds and I walk 5 days a week. So, and like we say, we walk fast because we're trying to stay one step ahead of Bernie Gray.
You walk together? You like at that stadium or?
Yeah. 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. We walk 4 miles.
At the mall or out at Deed Stadium?
Or
do you walk around the city?
We walk everywhere.
Good for you.
Our favorite walk is we do Kingston Point up to Benedictine Hospital.
Oh, that's a long walk.
Uphill.
And that's all uphill.
Yeah, it is.
And let me tell you something. By the time we get that one out of the way, we are huffing and puffing. But we go out. Sometimes we go out to the Ashokan Rail Trail. We do the Hurley Rail Trail.
Nice.
We do the Rosendale Rail Trail. We do Dietz Stadium. We do
You cover all of Ulster County.
We're absolutely. Sometimes we even try. You try and walk uptown. It's very difficult because the sidewalks are not level.
Either are the streets, Mario.
Yeah, and it's pretty difficult.
Try driving down from the top of Broadway to the bottom of Broadway.
I'm curious of the logistics of this. If you begin your walk at Kingston Point, do you drive down to Kingston Point? Or
No. We walk down.
Oh, you then walk back?
We walk from his house.
Uh-huh.
We walk all the way down, and then we come all the way back up.
Oh my!
Wow, so it's kind of wow. That's
and Delaware. Do you walk on Delaware Avenue?
Yeah. There are sidewalks on Delaware.
Yeah, there are, but there are some places that there aren't either.
The initial stretch is we're on the road.
Yeah, coming around that turn. Actually, Brian's right. When you take that sharp turn that brings you down into Pataki, there's no sidewalk.
That's the toughest of the verticals.
I was gonna say that there's no sidewalk on that.
And also East Chester Street also is or was it West?
Yes, West Chester Street.
Yeah,
that hill.
That hill's a backbreaker.
You know what's funny about that hill is that's our little mini version of imagine what San Francisco's like. If anybody ever been to San Francisco, it's that constantly. I've been there a couple times, and it's just, by the way, a beautiful city. And but anytime I go up that street or Highland Avenue for that matter, it kind of reminds me a little bit of San Francisco on a small scale.
They always say that people from San Francisco have the strongest legs, and there's a reason for it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so we do this, and of course then we commiserate. And we discuss all manner of politic.
Boy, that should, you know what? You should record that sometime and have that. You can make that a podcast.
Yeah, well, maybe we can. Maybe GHQ will sponsor a trip, and we'll all walk together. With a bullhorn.
To be a fly on the wall.
Anyway, so we do this, and he's been pretty upset about. He's a city resident, and so he's a little upset about the fact that we seem to have to hire somebody to do everything, and he just didn't understand why this grant, this money coming from the federal government, required anybody to do it. But it is what it is, and it's just the way the city is run. Now, in the second half of this hour, this morning, we're going to have the Town of Ulster Supervisor Jim Quigley here, and he has a little, different take on how things get done out there, and I'm interested to hear how they're handling the federal money that's coming in, if they're hiring somebody to do that, or if they can take care of it internally. So it'll be an interesting contrast, as it usually is with Supervisor Quigley. So when we return from break, we're going to have we're going to do our announcements, and then we're going to get into some Town of Ulster business.
And of course, birthdays.
Pardon?
And of course, birthdays.
Well, today
we haven't had any for the last couple days, so people are eager.
Is it really?
But
it is? You should have let me know.
Happy birthday!
My God, we could have put a fake name in for you. You could have been Mario Brothers wins
I can't eat all that ice cream. Okay?
Oh, you could have one slice.
But,
happy birthday, Mario!
Anyway,
happy birthday!
All right, so we'll go to break and we'll be back in a few minutes.
All right.
Let's.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Swimming pools are great for family fun, and Central Hudson wants you to play it safe. Never operate an electric appliance next to or in the pool. Be sure pool motors and filters are grounded. Have them installed by a professional and serviced by a licensed professional electrician. Be very careful if there are electric lines above or near a pool, especially if using long-handled cleaning tools. And if a storm is nearby, get out of the water. Your safety matters.
Everyone is talking about healthcare these days. America spends twice that of other developed countries on our healthcare system, yet our health ranks near the bottom. How can we stop spending so much and getting so little? By shifting to a system that gives more patients access to strong primary care. Primary care can help make America healthy again. To learn more about the benefits of primary care, visit www.healthisprimary.org. This message is brought to you by America's Family Physicians.
Screening exams for breast, lung, or colorectal cancers are necessary to detect and treat disease at its earliest, most curable stage. But you may have some concerns and questions. Answer your questions and ease your fears by visiting radiologyinfo.org. In addition to information on screening and wellness, you'll find more than 200 descriptions of radiologic exams, procedures, and treatments to help you prepare. Get informed and be prepared. Visit radiologyinfo.org, produced by the Radiological Society of North America and the American College of Radiology.
Hi, this is Jared Mans from the Spring Lake Fire Department, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio has been brought to you by the First Savings Bank in Ulster County that still remains local to this day. Ulster Savings Bank, a community bank that's invested in local business, invested in community, invested in you. Ulster Savings Bank, your one-stop resource for everything local. Locations throughout the Hudson Valley and online at ulstersavings.com. Member FDIC.
All right, good morning. We're back at KCR, Kingston Community Radio, Friday morning. Brian Woltman, Supervisor Jim Quigley from the Town of Ulster, and Mario Catalano this morning. We're trying to fill in for the inimicable Hugh Reynolds, who's away, as they say, on assignment, family-related assignment. So, in any event, it's 8:02 and time for our birthday celebrations. So, today is June 11th, and we have birthday wishes for Alicia Seebeking. I hope I pronounced that properly. Seebeking, from all her friends and family in Saugerties. Mm-hmm. So, Alicia, happy birthday. And we also have a happy birthday for Barbara Kolbinski from your friends at People's Place. And we have June 11th must be a popular day. We have a third birthday wish for Joyce Terwilliger from your friends at the Wellness and Healthy Lifestyle Club. And you folks are extremely fortunate because you are sharing your birthday with me. But unfortunately, I do not qualify for a cow pie.
You should have put your name in. We would have, used a fake last name or something. We could have had you be the pie winner.
As I said, I'm cow pied out. Anyway, so the winner of today's Boyce Dairy Milk House famous cow pie for June 11th is Barbara Kolbinski. Congratulations, Barbara.
Hey, happy birthday.
Enjoy that cow pie. And that comes to you courtesy of the Boyce Dairy Milk House and Kingston Community Radio. Now, because it's Friday, we also get to do the weekend birthdays. We don't have anybody for tomorrow, but for Sunday, we have a couple. So let's say happy birthday on June 13th to Jennifer Olensky from your family and friends. And here's a special one from Ruth Quick, who said, please wish my brother Ted Davis a very happy 60th birthday. Whoa, it's a milestone birthday. Love from Ruth.
Happy birthday, Ted.
And happy birthday, Ted. Happy big 6-0, buddy. And the winner of the famous cow pie for June 13th is Ted Davis.
Hey, happy birthday, Ted.
Happy birthday, Ted. And you may get your and pick up your cow pie at the Boyce Dairy Milk House on 62 O'Neill Street in Midtown Kingston. And that comes to you courtesy of Kingston Community Radio and the Boyce Dairy Milk House. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to be able to celebrate birthdays with these fine folks. We do have a couple of announcements to make. Do you still have your announcement?
Yes, I do. Tomorrow morning at the White Eagle Hall on Delaware Avenue in the city of Kingston, we're hosting a get-together, a ward meeting. It's tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. It's a chance for the people who live in the ward, primarily the Ward 8, but if anybody, I think, wants to attend from, particularly in the 7th Legislative District, which is the 6th, 7th, and 8th wards, we'd be very happy to have a chance to meet with you tomorrow morning and visit and basically listen to what your concerns are. We're going into an election season now, soon, again. I know they come around fast, but this year, though, is your local election, and the local election is the government that's closest to you. And I'm be delighted to sit and chat with you tomorrow morning and have a little chance to understand what your concerns are, and maybe a chance for you to get to know me a little bit. I'm Brian Woltman, running for the county legislature, and just want to have a chance to visit with you and understand what you're looking to do.
And in addition to that interesting get-together, we have from the Redeemer Lutheran Church at the corner of Wirtz and McEntee Streets, tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., what is being described as a giant yard sale. So all you folks who love yard sales, this is your chance. According to Patty Wolf, the coordinator and the co-chair of the Redeemer's Yard Sale, they have 3 garage bays bursting at the seams. According to Patty, everything from A to Z. So she may be reached at 594-5587 if you have any questions. But if not, show up at anywhere between 9 and 2 tomorrow for a fantastic garage sale. All right, the announcements are out of the way. We've now been joined by our retired county judge. Good morning, Judge Williams.
Good morning, Mario.
And
Jim, pleasure seeing you.
morning.
Brian,
we
how
have
are you?
we have a full house. We have a full house. U Reynolds doesn't show up one Friday, and the place is on fire. That's all I can say.
Banging down the door again.
I mean, that's it. You know.
Well, I heard Jim Quigley was going to
Well,
be part of this morning. And Lawrence said, you mind coming in at the last minute, a little extra time? I said, no problem. If Jim's going to be there, I'm going to be there.
Sure.
We got lots of good stuff, but let me just start out with the understanding that the town of Ulster and the city of Kingston are thinking about cooperating on the purchase of some sort of armored technology. Can you describe to us exactly what this thing is going to do and why we need it?
It's a souped-up Brinks truck.
It's a souped-up
Brinks truck.
A souped-up Brinks truck. Okay.
We're talking. Everybody is talking about this.
Picks up tax money. I mean, what are you guys going to be doing here with this?
Everybody's talking about. Well, it's a military vehicle. This, that, and the other thing. Let me just distinguish this vehicle from the vehicle that the Sheriff's Department operates. The Sheriff's Department operates a military surplus MRAP. That's a mine-resistant vehicle. That's a vehicle that can drive over a minefield, set the mines off, and everybody inside survives. Okay? We don't have that problem in the town of Ulster. The only minefields are the political minefields. So we're looking at reinforcing.
You guys need a food truck. That's what you need if it's politicians.
We're looking at reinforcing the cooperative services that have been formulated between the town of Ulster and the city of Kingston in our police departments. As you know, we totally surround the city of Kingston. Anybody that goes into Kingston, except for those that come from Port Ewan, basically go through the town of Ulster. And we have discovered that in many instances, those that commit crimes go back and forth across the border with impunity. And, we've had, the gun shootings in the city of Kingston, and we've had intelligence that the shooters have resided in the town of Ulster. And we become concerned that the victims and their friends may want to take retribution on those that shot at them. So we are concerned that the gun shots and the gunfire may migrate to the town of Ulster. So we have formed, together with the city of Kingston, and participate greatly with the emergency services unit. Those are, for the lack of a better term, that's the SWAT team. That's the team that you call when you really have problems. And they train and they train and they train. And in this instance, the city of Kingston has a recommendation from the Department of Criminal Justice, the DCJS, that the emergency services unit for the city of Kingston obtain a reinforced vehicle, a vehicle that can provide safety in an atmosphere where there's gunfire going off, a vehicle that can drive into a hot zone and remove people if they happen to be in distress. And that's basically, we're looking at it as a defensive weapon. We're not looking at it as an offensive weapon. It is not a tank. It is something that has got reinforced steel sides. It's got a beefed up diesel engine, a heavy duty transmission, puncture-proof tires, and some bulletproof glass. And it's designed to bring people into a hot zone, to help them evacuate people. And I think the picture that the mayor put out in the City of Kingston press release the other day was an appropriate variation of the vehicle that we're talking about, where they were showing that the Miami Fire Department had used this in fire rescue. So that's basically what we're talking about. We're not talking about buying a tank.
You know something, Jim? On its face, people may say, well, why in hell does town of Ulster need that? And I'll give you an example of why you do need it. New Paltz is not now or never has been thought of as a bastion for gun violence, obviously. Yet, I can't recall the day or the year, but when I was district attorney, there was a young man by the name of Jared Bosey Day who had some issues, obviously, and held the entire village at bay with a semi-automatic weapon. Looked like an assault rifle. It wasn't. It was a semi-automatic weapon with banana clips attached. He fired rounds indiscriminately throughout the village. People were hiding within their apartments. And when police responded in their normal patrol units, one young woman who was a police officer had one of the rounds come right through the windshield, barely missing her. Another deputy was struck in the hand. So it doesn't happen frequently, but once is enough. And it's, in your case, it's not only to protect the police that must respond to the most violent situations, but it's also for the purpose, as you've indicated, of retrieving hostages, of protecting innocent victims, not just people in uniform. And although Ulster County in the past has always been thought of as a safe haven from the type of crimes that occur in New York City, that is not always the case. And we had Robert Bonilla, town of Ulster, who took, again, a semi-automatic weapon, but converted it with banana clips and fired 60 rounds into the Hudson Valley Mall for no other reason, no other motivation other than personally to gain some attention. Obviously, somebody disturbed, but to gain attention. So the need is there.
60 days ago or less, we had an incident in Ruby where there was gunshots fired during a domestic altercation within the household. The guy shot his house up pretty good, but the house was remote. And I mean, the letter to the editor references, well, why couldn't the police hide behind the trees as they approached the house? Well, try that when you're evacuating a body on a stretcher. Okay? The point being is that in this instance, there was a long driveway. You had an exposed field of fire. You couldn't get close to the house. They had to wait at the bottom of the hill. They had to speak to the guy via telephone, whereas if this vehicle was in service at that time, they would have drove right up to the front door. One of the guys could have gotten out, walked around, and just had a conversation with the guy without fear of getting shot while he was approaching the house.
And the cases of domestic violence are some of the most where officers and other innocent people are prone to that harm. So using it in an occasion like that also makes a great deal of sense. I don't know what is the reason why people would oppose, other than perhaps if they have a generic distrust of law enforcement, which seems to be popular of late. Other than that generic distrust, why not protect the police and the private citizens with the type of equipment you're referring to? I don't understand that.
It was a very interesting experience in the last several months as we talk about the effect of policing on our community. And we have we've had the opportunity to speak to some of the residents in the town of Ulster, and they talked about natural biases. The people walk their dogs in their neighborhood, okay? And their neighborhoods are nice, quiet, peaceful, suburban neighborhoods. And the suggestion was made, why don't you go walk your dog on Down Street? Why don't you go walk your dog on Henry Street? What? No, why would I go in those neighborhoods? That, to me, here's people expressing bias against the police. But when you suggest to them to enter into the communities that the police have a presence and are present to stop violence, and you suggest to them, why don't you go walk your dog in those neighborhoods? They recognize that those neighborhoods have those attributes that they want, that they live in suburbia for, to get away from.
And the sad thing, the sad commentary on all of this, not just in Ulster County, but across the nation, the people that are mainly legitimate people who live in communities where there are more violent acts, so many of them, they don't want to defund the police. They want a greater police presence. I'm talking about, and there are other people that are also legitimate, that have voiced understandable concerns that changes have to be made in the criminal justice system. But you talk to the folks that live in difficult communities, and they are legitimate, hardworking people. They want a stronger, better trained police department. And I Mario, you and I go back in this area. Brian, you're much younger than Mario and me, but I remember the guys in the Kingston Police Department walked the beat.
Yeah.
And I was born and raised on Crown Street, and I got into a few tussles. I'm sure you're shocked, rather aggressive. There's a lot of sports. My dad was a disciplinarian. He was a frogman in World War II. But there were times I felt I couldn't talk to him out of my respect for him and also fear of disappointing him. Yet Tom Barringer Sr., big cop, walked the beat, used to walk past Crown Street. I'd be sitting out in the porch, and I would talk to him about things. He'd stop and chat with me. And from that, also from the training from my parents, but from that, I gained such a healthy respect for people in uniform because I saw him as a human being and somebody that I could trust and go to. If I know it's much easier to walk the beat on Crown Street, although Crown Street was not what it is today, than it would be to go into some of the more violent areas. But I really believe that is helpful. Same as with school resource officers. Don't think of them as police officers with a gun. Those officers, much as the DARE program, the Drug Awareness Program, kids are getting to see police officers as human beings, as people that can help. And I think that would go a long way in addressing this distrust of police, and we've lost that.
Without question. My brother Harry was a school resource officer for
Harry was a
the
great
Kingston High School.
We talked about it. I don't think it was with you guys. It was on a show with someone else, and there's a big to-do now about get those armed uniform guys. That's not what we should be showing our kids. And I said, the school resource officers is a great thing if you get the right officer.
Well, I'll tell you a story that about, I think it's 9 or 10 years ago, the town of Ulster had a school resource officer at Miller Middle School, Travis Nissen.
Okay.
The late Travis Nissen. And Travis, unfortunately, had a car accident. And I have to tell you that the outpouring of support from the Miller Middle School community after his death was tremendous. It was tremendous. And the stories that we started to hear afterwards, the basketball games, the pickup basketball games, those conversations that were private conversations that you had, like with Tommy Barringer. He had them with tons of people, and nobody knew about it. And when I called the current SRO in, Dan Killian, and sat him down, and I said, well, in the last year with what's going on, what do you want to do? He says, I take this as a personal challenge. Okay? I'm not there to bust heads. I'm there to make friends and to teach these people the respect, give them the respect that they deserve so that they learn how to give respect in return for, people in a position.
And that was Travis's reputation. I do know about the horrible, tragic incident. But that was Travis's reputation within the schools. It's Harry's reputation within the schools. If you get the right officers, that trust that people have to have, there has to be a respect and a fear, but a trust of law enforcement. And we seem to have lost that.
So, did we get to the topic that you wanted to get to?
Well, I'm listening and I'm fascinated, but my question is, do you think that the town board is going to go ahead with this? And it was very interesting because I don't know if you obviously saw the letter to the editor this morning in the newspaper, and somebody wrote in about why you don't need. It's a very, very typical of the anti-type responses to these, where they just throw up a lot of roadblocks. Some of them justified, but I thought your comment was that the best one was if the incident that the town of Ulster is referring to was in a rural rural area, why didn't the police just use trees as shelter? I mean, hello, would you want your son, a police officer, having to take on an active shooter by ducking behind trees? I mean, this guy obviously has watched too many cowboy movies.
Well, I can speak as a father of a sheriff's deputy, my son Brian Jr., and no, safety. We want safety abounding. Yeah, that's.
The bottom line is that we run a business-like administration in the town of Ulster. If the departments under the town board's purview request a tool to do a job, we usually evaluate it, but we usually give them the tools to do their job. And, I think you have now a situation where you're looking at one of your departments that has become politicized, and that certain attitudes are translating themselves into, well, don't give them the tools. The object is to have the tool available when the situation occurs. It's not to go to the store and buy the tool when the situation occurs. And, I could...
Also to have them trained to use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we could sit here and we could justify a $250,000 four-wheel drive plow truck, and nobody would disagree that the highway department should have the tools to do their job. We've had expensive computer equipment purchased by the water department for the detection of leaks. Nobody disputes buying the tools.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you never understand the true cost of not having the tool until you have a situation where it's unavailable and something happens.
And that's the nature of our society and culture. We react.
What's the price for one life?
And the other thing that, and Mario just touched on it, the people that will be working with this vehicle are going to receive greater and more intense training than regular police officers that are out on the street. They are going to be trained in how to respond to these highly volatile situations. So if you look at it just from that perspective, everybody's saying there should be more training for police. I agree. Now you're going to have a group of people that are elite, well-trained in how to use and not use deadly physical force. So I other than whatever it costs, and I live in Kingston, so that's your issue, Jim, but other than...
Well, it's my issue, too, and I want you to buy the damn thing.
You do or don't?
I do.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Other than the cost, I really... The people that are opposing... I don't understand the reason for it. Other than a general fear and an animosity, or some issues now with law enforcement across.
Well, I'll just say also, it's just I don't think they appreciate fully the what we're talking about. I think they just see its appearances. It looks like an armored vehicle. Oh, it looks like they haven't had to explain to them the way Jim Quigley just explained to us what this vehicle is exactly, and their first perception of it. Oh, here we go again, armored vehicle militarizing the police, and it's not that at all.
I think the biggest problem right now that we're having is the fact that there have been some widely reported incidences of police malfeasance, and these folks, there's a group of people out there who are willing to paint all police departments and all police officers with this broad brush of they can't be trusted, they are racist, they are this, they are that. And, I have to be honest with you. I know a tremendous number of police officers. I see them as patients. I have them as friends. I interact with them at different levels. I don't see any of that. Our folks are part of our community. They're our neighbors, and I've had some. I have 4 boys, and they were a little wild. And a couple of them have had incidences where they were brought home by police officers for doing something they shouldn't have done or whatever. But it was always extremely cordial, and they seemed to completely understand. They were virtually like pseudo parents to these kids, and I just don't get this widespread. Let's paint the brush. We want the community to do this and then control the police, and I honestly don't see it. And all the time that I've been here for 50 years, I knew one state trooper 50 years ago who occasionally would say something that was, might be considered racist, might not. But the point is, most of them are really honest, decent people willing to put their lives on the line for our protection. And boy, in my opinion, they just don't get enough support from us.
Well, anyway, Mario, I have to leave, but I want to thank you for inviting me to be on with you today. I enjoyed our time together, and it's always a pleasure to see Supervisor Quigley. And
thanks for bringing some of that county perspective. There were some things there I didn't know about, and I certainly appreciate it. I hope the listeners appreciated the spirited conversation about the RRA.
Well, I enjoyed it very much. And Lawrence, thank you, sir.
Wait a minute. You talked about the RRA before I got here, and you didn't give me a chance?
Oh, you have now the door is wide open, Jim.
Yeah, but you're leaving. You're such a wealth of knowledge on it.
No, I'm not. But anyway, thank you very much.
We were talking. All right, Brian. Thanks for coming in. And we were talking about the fact whether or not the county controller should be able to audit the RRA. That was it. I mean, and I was very concerned with the fact that Ulster County is getting a huge grant from the federal government, this COVID grant money, and nowhere on the list of projects that were listed to be considered was there any discussion of what we're going to do with our garbage in 4 years when the landfill, the Seneca landfill closes. It's almost like that's not our problem. And here you got some dough, and maybe you could do something about it, or maybe we can start the process. So Brian and I were talking about it because he had served on that committee in the legislature. But what do you think? Should they be audited?
First of all, the word audit. What is an audit? An audit's an investigation. Why are you investigating them? What's the reason? Are there operational issues? Are there financial issues? You have to define what you're auditing. Now, let's face it.
Spoken like a true auditor.
I'm going to go further because
he has some experience in that field.
This is also political season, and the controller, whose office is responsible for the audits, needs a target. So, what are you looking for? Everybody hates the RRA because it costs so much to get rid of what everybody thinks should not cost so much, garbage.
I'm paying Waste Management twice what I was paying them 5 years ago.
Exactly. So, you take a stick to the piñata and you hope something falls out. Well, the question is, what are you looking for? Is it an operational audit where you're going to go see whether they're in compliance with their rules? Well, doesn't the DEC do that? Or are you going to do a financial statement audit, which in this case, they have a series of checks and balances and internal controls within the organization. The current executive director is the CPA, and they're audited by the external auditors.
Who are the external auditors?
They're out of Albany. It's
it must be on an annual basis.
They're annually audited, and on top of that, they report to the state controller's office.
And I was about to say, the state comptroller, I think, has responsibility for that.
Well, let's go who really does have responsibility for the RRA.
That's a great question.
The Ulster County Legislature.
Okay.
The legislature appoints all the members of the RRA board.
But then the RRA, what is it called?
It's an independent agency of the county reporting to the legislature.
Okay.
The legislature is the body that's set and put their impromptu on the 10-year solid waste plan.
Yet the Resource Recovery Agency must report annually to state agencies. Yeah. So in some fashion, the state also regulates this, correct?
They regulate it under the DEC regulations under the Part 360.
So what is it about the county comptroller? Is the county comptroller criticizing the state agency for failure to regulate and audit? I mean, since it is a county agency, in effect, I could understand that the comptroller would want to look at it. But if that is already being done by a state agency that is independent from Ulster County politics, was there a particular reason? I know when I was district attorney, we received complaints about the Resource Recovery Agency, and we investigated it. Specific complaints of allegations of criminality. We investigated it. But is there something happening now other than increase in prices that is causing for
I think
county
it has.
audit?
I think the issue here, there was some insinuation that there was favoritism in where they're selling the composted material or something. There was a contract that was signed, and I think that's the basis. It was a composting contract of some sort, and I think that's what she wants to audit.
That one simple transaction.
Well, you see, here's the fundamental bottom line as an auditor, particularly as a government auditor who gets paid to find things. If you go into an organization, you have to find something to justify your job. For example, the town of Ulster has been audited several times. One of the comments was there was no written policy about the supervisor's vacation time. Well, let's talk about that, because the supervisor is an elected official, and according to state statute, there is only one day in his term he has to show up. It's the day he takes his oath. And he could be MIA for that entire term and still get paid, and there is no discussion as to where he is at that point in time.
Basically, the same applies to every elected official.
Exactly. So what is the materiality in this case of auditing the RRA? You have 130,000 tons of garbage going through the RRA at $100 plus a ton. And yet the problem is with how they're selling 3,000 tons of compost at $30 a ton. Okay, as I have been told and as I have experienced, compost is available on a first-come, first-served basis. Okay, the town of Ulster sometimes obtains some of the compost which we put up at our transfer station and is available to the users of the transfer station to drive up, take it home with them. We also make our own compost, which they can do the same thing with. But when you're only producing 3,000 tons of compost and there are no natural topsoil banks left in Ulster County that a homeowner could get topsoil to put in his garden or on his lawn, and I would venture to say the demand is a multiple of the 3,000 tons, somebody who doesn't get their allocation is going to cry foul.
And that is typical of how these type of investigations begin, when a person or a few people file complaints. But I've seen the state comptroller look at town courts. I've seen the attorney general investigate matters that involve local agencies such as the Resource Recovery Agency. So I'm uncertain, unless there is a specific allegation of criminality that has a factual basis.
Well, let's take it one step further. As I said, the RRA is under the auspices of the county legislature. There is a board of directors that is named by the legislators that operates and sets policy for the RRA. As I have been told, these issues have been brought to the board's attention. There is a new chairperson. There are several new members of the board out there. Give them a chance to do their job. Instead of calling in for the artillery before you can find out what's on the ground. Let's kill everybody.
So essentially what you're saying is that...
I'm saying define what the problem is.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Define the problem. And for the town of Ulster, the problem is the composting operation releases horrible smells into the air periodically when they turn the pile. And number two, the RRA went under the previous board's administration, purchased additional land, and under the auspices of the Ulster County Legislature, with the 10-year solid waste plan, made a policy decision to increase the number of tons of composting without speaking to the town of Ulster government as to how these operations would affect its citizens. And as I said several times, I will say it again, if the RRA was a private business in the town of Ulster, we would have shut them down by now for their releases of these smells. But somebody has to talk to the town of Ulster, because as a component of the government, they are exempt from our zoning and they are exempt from our planning laws. They don't need to tell us anything. That I call not being a good neighbor.
That's a great point.
Well,
you don't live in close proximity to those.
I do not live downwind. But I've always said, and again, I don't know that this is even viable at this point in time, but maybe we should have multiple locations. For instance, maybe one of these town landfills that we've closed previously, Rosendale or whatever, could manage the composting operation. Find a landfill that's away from, a lot of human. Town of Ulster is a pretty busy town, and it's a pretty densely populated town. Maybe we need to do the composting at another location.
That is akin to asking the question, which town wants to host the landfill? And,
I choose Rosendale because they're represented by Manna Jo Green. She is a big composting proponent, and I think she could probably sell it to her town board.
I'm doubting the sincerity of that comment, Mario, for some reason.
Well, the sincerity, here's the sincerity of it.
No, you sincerely probably want.
No, what I sincerely want is I want people who are proponents of things in my town to be proponents of things in their town. That's all.
I'm going to add to that, okay? Because when there was a discussion about the future uses of the East Campus of Tech City, Miss Green proposed a recycling center on that site. Now, that is smack in the heart of the commercial district, surrounded by residential neighborhoods, and if that operation started to produce toxic smells, toxic to the smell sense, not necessarily toxic in a chemical sense, they would be held to pay for the local elected government.
Oh, that would have been a great shopping experience.
She brought this to the floor without speaking to the local elected leaders as to what we want. And this is a reoccurring problem with people that represent the collective community at a higher level. They make decisions for the local level without asking anybody what we want. And as Brian said, local government is the closest layer of government to the people. I have people pre-COVID walking into my office every day registering a complaint about some aspect of life in the town of Ulster. That does not happen on the 6th floor of the county office building. It does not happen in the New York State Legislature, whether it be the Assembly or the Senate. These people who are elected by the same people that elect me do not have the same degree of contact with their constituents on a day-to-day basis, and I would extend that analogy to the fact that if you asked most of the people in a community who their elected legislators were in the Ulster County Legislature, they could not tell you.
Well, I think most people probably couldn't tell us the name of the vice president or most certainly Secretary of State. So that's frightening. However, I don't think that's unique to this issue of the Resource Recovery Agency. It's when we had this disaster that was so politically expedient called bail reform. Who do you think that the legislators that passed this horribly drafted bail reform should speak to before doing it? Well, the DA's Association was one that stepped up and opposed it. But here I was sitting for 10 years as a judge, 30 years before that as an assistant DA, chief assistant, and DA. No one, and I always made myself available, no one contacted me to ask for my input.
I thought you were a shrinking violet.
You know, well, maybe not, but as a judge, I was limited with what I could say. I wouldn't come on the radio show because of such limitations, such restrictions. But you most certainly can give input into proposed legislation based on your experience. If not as a judge, the 30 years I worked as a prosecutor, yet no one, and that's sad.
Well, that's interesting because about 60 days ago, and everyone knows this is an election year, I paid for, out of my own pocket, a county-wide poll on a number of issues. And we talked about in the poll, if to these individual communities, rank your number one priority for your community. And it's amazing to see the wide variation of rankings, okay?
Did you do this by town?
We did. We broke it out by town and legislative district.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't have a large enough sample size for the legislative districts to be able to make it a valid sample. But on the town basis, the sample sizes were large enough that you could draw some kind of conclusion from them. And there is a wide variation. I focused on the town of Ulster because it's my home community. I'm running for re-election. I wanted to know what the people were thinking. And, taxes and jobs are number one. And in the town of Ulster, environment was at the bottom.
Boy, you never know that from listening to the, local newspapers and.
Right. You look at the city of Kingston. In the city of Kingston, affordable housing was at the top. Okay. And you look across the rest of the communities, and I was shocked because I did share some of these results with some of my fellow supervisors, because there were issues that came out of this survey that I said I thought they should be aware of. One of the primary questions that we asked were, do you feel more safe today, less safe, about the same, or no difference? And, when we got into discussing the results of that question, because predominantly most people felt less safe. Well, there are two magnitudes of that question that we didn't take into consideration when we asked the question, which would have caused us to design the question in a little bit of a different format. Because when you look at the number one issues in some of the communities being public safety, and you look at the answer to the question, do you feel more or less safe, you're equating the two or relating the two. So they're feeling less safe because of public safety issues. No, that's not necessarily what the constituents were communicating, because we had a long discussion about we're just coming out of COVID-19 and the fear factor that was created by the pandemic amongst the people in the population could impact the question.
So
do you feel more or less safe?
The question was too general.
Too general, and what it does is it then dictated that we got, at some point we will go back in the field and ask to develop some of the high points to kind of break it down further. But I am intensely interested in what the people in the town of Ulster say. And going through the police reform process, where we had to go out and put together a committee, a wide committee, as to political beliefs and personal beliefs, and we were successful in doing that. But the committee that we put together was dramatically different in their outcomes than the same committee that was put together in Rosendale or Kingston or Highland. And I mean, all of this is a reflection of the demographics of the community. The town of Ulster, because of its location and the fact that IBM for such a long period of time had a tremendous impact on the business environment, we are basically a conservative community with people that believe in their personal rights to property and wealth preservation, and they believe that you get what you get through hard work in life. And that's my view of the broad sense of the community. Now, do we have a wide variation of opinions within that? Yes, we do. We have our recent transfers from outside Ulster County. We have the people moving from the city of Kingston to the town of Ulster. They all bring a different perspective.
Do you know, Jim, what kind of either percentages or the effect? Kingston has changed dramatically in just a few years. Are you experiencing that same change with New York City, specifically Brooklyn, moving to your community?
We're about to see in the next 10 years, I believe, a tremendous change in the town of Ulster, because at the present time, 50% of our population is over age 50. They are retirees. The town of Ulster has transitioned from the business hub of Ulster County to what I want to say, the retiree hub of Ulster County. Okay? We are a community that is dependent upon Social Security, IBM, and Verizon pensions. Okay? You look at the largest employers, the county government, the school system, the private industries being IBM. They have a tremendous impact in our society, in the town of Ulster. Now, everybody asks me, why is it that the Hudson Valley Mall cannot sustain itself? My answer is a natural one of economics. How many pairs of sneakers does a 75-year-old person buy? Okay? How many pairs of jeans? What is the spending patterns of the retiree portion of our population? The restaurants do wonderful in the town of Ulster, and if you go out there between 5 and 7, you'll see why. Okay? It's the affluence, or I shouldn't say affluence, it's the relative affluence of the retirees that have a secure retirement income through the pension and Social Security system, and they spend it on disposal, on immediate gratification, in the sense that they're looking and eating, going out and enjoying themselves.
And I'm sure a dramatic impact on brick and mortar stores such as the mall is also the availability of purchasing things online. It is so easy to buy something online, and if it doesn't fit, you don't like it, you return it.
And that's all well and good, but if the majority of the people are in the age group where they're not buying goods to begin with because they have every material good they need in their life, okay, what happens? If you look at the spending cycle in the economy, it's family formation, it's raising kids that drive the disposable, the sales dollars in the retail community. We don't have a lot of kids. You look at the school-age population. The school-age population in our community is decreasing. And why I say we are going to have a tremendous change in the next 10 years, IBM closed in 1995. Those people were 55 years old at that time that took the retirement, because everybody that was younger transferred out and went to work someplace else. 30 years later, that means they're 85. In 10 years, they'll be 95. By that point in time, the majority of them, the vast majority of them, will have moved on in the circle of life.
I find myself buying more now that I'm retired and at the tender age of 68, but at the same time, that's a point that I would never look at, that it is. We know the town of Ulster, compared to City of Kingston especially, is a more conservative community. But it also makes a great deal of sense that more seniors are retired and living there. And that does have a dramatic impact on everything across.
And the people that are moving in from outside the area are looking to move into a more urban, walkable community. That, by definition, is not the town of Ulster, because the town of Ulster is a subdivision-based town with no sidewalks.
You mentioned before about affordable housing, especially as it impacts Kingston. That was one of the higher things I think you said in these surveys. The folks that talk the most about affordable housing, at least as a philosophy, are people that are coming from larger metropolitan areas and moving into the city of Kingston, philosophically. Yet those same people are driving up the rents. I know so many individuals that are not making a great deal of money. One example, close friend, dental assistant, lived in a two-family on very close uptown Kingston, lived there probably 20 or 30 years. Great landlords lived next door. Recently, a couple came up from New York City. The woman was a therapist / musician. The landlord you can't complain about it. They sold the property for a very high amount, cash sale, and now, within 2 months, this person's being evicted, essentially, out of that apartment because this new couple want to convert it to a single family. And cash talks.
Yep.
They came up with a lot of cash. Again, can't fault the owners for making that profit, but once again, this person is now looking for a comparable apartment.
And it's not available.
It's not only is it not available in a similar amount from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom for a similar amount, not only available, $200 or $300 more a month. Those places, there's no availability.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about, and there obviously is a real issue with affordable housing in Kingston for people that don't have much of an income at all, but I'm talking about a person that is lower middle class, dental assistant, hardworking, yet finding an apartment is extremely difficult. And that is being caused, and this is anytime you can reach a conclusion that's so simplistic, there are myriad exceptions, but that's being caused by the prices being driven up dramatically by the influx into Kingston, walkable area of uptown Kingston, businesses, restaurants. It's being caused by the influx of people coming up from New York City who are the biggest philosophical proponents of gentrification should not happen and affordable housing. You folks that are in office have to give affordable housing. They're the ones driving the price up. And the hypocrisy, that is incredible.
And then you have a project like the Kingstonian where they're willing to put quite a bit of money into some nice housing, make some of the apartments affordable, etc. You have one person who owns a few hotels uptown, essentially has that project tied up in court.
The same person that bought the building next to where I was born and raised, is that the same person that bought the Sione building?
Yeah.
That has stood vacant.
Yep.
It's the one area of uptown Kingston that's disgusting to look at.
This guy's got lawsuits all over the place, has blocked that project. And then you have the old Stony Run wanting to convert to affordable housing, but they want all kinds of tax breaks in order.
Let me address that, because I understand that the owners, the buyers of Stony Run, went to some sitting alderman and said, "What would you like to see here?" And the suggestion from the aldermen were affordable housing. Well, when you look at the financials, how do you get affordable housing? What expenses can you control to make the rent affordable? You can't control electric, you can't control natural gas, and you can't control maintenance. You can control real estate taxes. So, of course, they're going to turn around and they're going to ask for a limitation on real estate taxes. And if you look at all the quote-unquote affordable housing projects that are built, what is the biggest cost saver that process generates? It's a savings in real estate taxes through a pilot. For example, the Chambers projects owned by Mr. Aaron in the town of Ulster pay less than $110 a year in real estate taxes per apartment. Whereas $2,500 to $3,000 for the market rate apartments.
Wow, that's significant.
And the newer projects that we negotiated, and by newer I mean they're like 6 or 8 years ago, they were like $450 now. And the recent renegotiations for pilots in the city of Kingston are closer to $1,000, $1,500 per unit. But the point is, there is a major divergence between market rate taxes on market rate apartments and the subsidized taxes through a pilot agreement on quote-unquote subsidized housing or affordable housing.
So what do you think? Should they be given those?
That's a social.
Can they even do this?
They can do this
without the tax breaks.
They cannot. Can they do market rate in today's environment? No. Because market rate becomes unaffordable when you add up all the costs, particularly as it relates to the Kingstonian, where you're putting so much money into a parking garage that is basically dead investment with no return on it. There's no income on that. Okay? In the town of Ulster, there has to be some types of consideration given to market rate apartments because of the fact that every project that comes online now today that is new is valued on cost. And cost is dramatically different than the values 25 years ago when we had our last assessment.
Okay, Supervisor Quigley, Judge Williams, thank you both for standing in for Hugh Reynolds, who ducked this issue today. And let me turn this over to Lawrence, and thank you so much.
Happy birthday, Mario.
Thank you.
Enjoy many, many more. Everyone have a good weekend. We'll be back on Monday with Medical Monday.